14 years ago, lives were changed across the tri-state, more specifically in Evansville, as a tornado hit overnight, classified as an F3 tornado with wind speeds up to 200 miles per hour. 25 people lost their lives because of that storm, 20 just in a mobile home park right off of Interstate 69, which then was I-164, which was called the Eastbrook Mobile Home. An anniversary memorial is set up there now in that area, just remembering the 20 lives that were lost. So this week in WeatherWire, I want to talk to you about how that tornado formed. One, how tornadoes overall in general form, but more specifically, what happened when this particular tornado came on through. So we'll go to a full screen graphic to kind of show you what's going on. These are actual model data that came from the National Weather Service as they did their research to see what happened with this storm, how it became so violent, and how it rapidly formed into an F3 tornado at that time. So a cold front was on its way through, is off to our west, but you can see there was a northward surge of moisture working its way in. Moisture itself is fuel for a storm. A storm needs moisture, obviously, because storms bring rain, but the more moisture a storm can get, higher dew points, that then in turn will result in more fuel for that storm. There's also a lot of instability in the atmosphere. We look at something called a lapse rate, also a lifted index as well. Kind of put those together to form some instability. And when you have a negative number on a lifted index, that indicates there is instability. And if you look there at the center of the screen, kind of where the darkest shade of purple is, right there where the tornado came on through in parts of the tri-state. Started in Henderson and Vanderburgh County over to Warwick and then into Spencer County, actually crossing the Ohio River 3 times. Now this is to look at the helicity. Helicity is the amount of spin that you have in the atmosphere, and once again that bullseye basically is just over to the east of Evansville in Vanderburgh County, but nonetheless still a lot of helicity here in that part of the tri-state. Also, there were some winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere at 18,000 feet were about roughly 95 miles per hour. At about 10,000 feet, the winds were 75 miles per hour, and that is a big factor because when you have winds going different speeds at different levels of the atmosphere, that is going to create a tube, if you will, of spinning air. So there's the surface winds right there, but the winds aloft are going a lot stronger, a lot faster. And when that happens, it creates that tube I was just telling you about that starts to spin. Well, when that begins to spin and then a storm comes on by, it has updrafts with it. Those updrafts then take that tube of air, turn it vertical, and pull it up into the storm, which then can create a wall cloud. And if that storm continues on, sooner or later, it's very possible that you can have a tornado just as you see right there. So a quick demonstration kind of show you, same concept. You see I have my tube here with my moisture, my storm, but then as an updraft begins to take it into the vertical, and you get enough rotation, then as you see here, there is a tornado. That is how tornadoes form, and more particular, more how specific that one formed there that hit in that mobile home park. Well, the good news is no tornadoes in our forecast, just a lot of cold weather.